Okay, the podcast, we dissect the week in politics. Ashley Church and Maurice Williamson will look at the giant mess-up from the New Zealand police and what the polls show. Labour is back. How is that possible? What's it done? My goodness, let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, proudly sponsored by the Brothers Green. Unlock the innate power of New Zealand botanicals to support your mobility. Try the Brothers Green New Zealand Move Joint Support Tonic and join over 20,000 other Kiwis experiencing easier movement. For as little as $1 a day, you too can experience the power of New Zealand hemp seed oil for your joint health. Head to brothersgreen.co and use code DG20 at the checkout for 20% off your first order. It's a good one. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch. Okay, g'day. Nice to see you. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Duncan Garner. Welcome along. And please subscribe if you can. Text my name, Duncan, to 3598. And then immediately we'll get you a link sent to you. And for $7.99 a month, you will be able to sign up. And you get all sorts of content that comes out today. The subscriber service comes out today. We send all sorts of different content, interviews, Ask Me Anything sessions, the whole shebang. So you text 3598. Text my name, Duncan, to 3598. And you join the movement. You join Team Duncan. You get independent media. And you can say that you've got a part ownership of that. There we go. So nice to see you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for watching. And thank you for following the podcast. Man, what a week from hell for the New Zealand police. A week from hell for the New Zealand police where their credibility has dived. Yes, there are many, many, many good cops. But the top brass was rotten. It's gone now, but what's the fallout? So we'll look at that. And also this poll now, which is good news for Labour. I find this hard to fathom, especially with the Māori Party collapse. Ashley Church and Maurice Williamson will join me shortly. Let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, Labour's back on top, and the government just got a wake-up call, actually. For the first time in months, the red tide is rising again. The latest Talbot poll, commissioned by the Taxpayers Union, has Labour leapfrogging National, landing at roughly 34.8% to National's 33.5%. On paper, it's a slim lead. In politics, it's a thunderclap. That's the thing, they're ahead. After a bruising year of public frustration, economic anxiety and struggle, and coalition, the odd squabble, the electorate appears to be turning its head. The government's once comfortable position has evaporated, replaced by a tightrope of voter doubt. Momentum, that elusive political currency, now belongs to Labour again. This has bounced back and forward, but National had a lead there for a few months, and the reversal comes with some real bite. This isn't just a statistical blip, it's a bit of a signal. Labour's rise tells us that the public mood may have shifted, not dramatically, but perhaps decisively. The National-led coalition is struggling to convert campaign promises into credible delivery, and the cracks are beginning to show. And the problem is when you raise expectations that we will deal to this. The problem is when you raise expectations that we will not spend as much as they do, or did, and then when you can't meet that expectation and promise, people get really annoyed, and they feel let down. You're better off probably to promise nothing and lower expectations, but no, they promised a lot and they've delivered very little. And right now we're high in unemployment as well. So we're at the highest we've been in 8 years. That's biting as well. The cost of living crisis simply has never disappeared. Now, whether it's policy paralysis or coalition infighting or a string of unpopular decisions, voters are noticing. Meanwhile, Labour, long written off by many of us as wary and directionless and mistake-ridden and too close to the Māori Party, well, they're finally showing signs of some life. The numbers are the numbers. At 38%, Labour is back in the fight. Despite botched policy announcements, this will make National voters scratch their heads and say, how on earth did they get to 38? The coalition's got a problem around complacency. For National, this is the stuff of nightmares. You can't govern comfortably when your lead evaporates in one poll. The message from the electorate is brutally simple. We're not convinced. And it's been like this for 2 years now. They're not convinced of National. And it shouldn't be like that. They should have come in there and swept those guys away and held a lead right the way through. Voters who once believed in the promise of a steady hand and a steady recovery are now seeing hesitation. Instead of a united front, the coalition often looks like three parties arguing over who left the oven on. That's not leadership, that's damage control, isn't it, really? And when you're only 1 or 2 percentage points behind the margins, merciless. Every misstep, every headline, every tone-deaf remark could swing the next election. And remember, unemployment, as I said, is peaking. So Labour's task is don't waste the moment. And, well, they're not really, are they? Hipkins sits in the leader's preferred Prime Minister. How? I don't know. For Labour, the challenge now is really clear. Turn momentum into movement, into a solid movement. A 1-point lead in a poll isn't power, it's potential power. So to capitalise, Labour needs to tell a sharper, stronger story, one of competence and fairness and forward motion. The issue around competence is a problem because I argue that they're probably not at the moment. So they need to start defining the future again, what it looks like. That means putting cost of living issues front and centre, presenting real, credible alternatives and showing discipline, something voters are desperate to see from both sides of the aisle, both sides of the House, really. The takeaway in this poll. So this poll is more than the headline. It's a bit of a warning shot to National, actually. For the government, it's a reminder that voter patience isn't infinite. For Labour, it's proof that revival is possible. The next few months will decide whether this is a one-off surge of the beginning of a comeback or is it a real comeback. For now, though, one fact stands tall. Labour's ahead, and the beehive just felt the tremor. And to me, the central question is the one Donald Trump asked before the election in America. He asked this question: do you feel better off under National? Look around the room, wherever you're listening to this podcast, look around. Find a friend or find even a stranger and ask them that very simple question. Do you feel better off after a term of the National government? What's your answer? Let me know. Duncan at rover.nz. Let's go.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, time for our panel now. Ashley Church and Maurice Williamson join us. Lots to talk about. This police, of course, the police. Corruption and cover-up is what I'm calling it. I think it's fair to say that. I think the IPCA should have actually used the term corruption. They stopped short of that, and it was disappointing. Maurice, Ashley, g'day. Nice to see you guys.
G'day.
Nice to see you too.
Maurice, were you ever a police minister?
No, I was Transport Minister, so I had the police answer to me for the 1/5 of their budget that we funded for road safety and policing. So I used to meet with them on a regular basis and find out what they were doing. But it was only ever in the transport space, nothing to do with sort of anything to do with crime or...
Yeah, well, any suggestion the IPCA didn't come down hard on the police, or never does, is that's a fallacy, because that report from the IPCA, that was in depth. It was brutal, yes. And it got to the nub of the matter. It's rotten there, Maurice.
I did something this morning which I sort of almost regret now. I got ChatGPT to have a look at history and cases of police misconduct in New Zealand, and I got pages and pages of people who had been convicted in jail for some time and finally exonerated and they had lied in some of their reports, and it said the one case I was reading, it said the witness said it was a Maori running away, but they took that out of the evidence. They changed the cartridges at Arthur Allen Thomas' site and convicted because of the cartridges had been manufactured after the shootings and so on. So I don't think it's as bad as some will try to make out, but it was a big list. And just recently to have them doing thousands of alcohol tests when they weren't actually doing them, and just recording that they'd done them, and they got found out on that. And then this one in particular, I also have a feeling when these things break open like they do, there's a whole lot of legs to this story yet to come.
Correct. Yep. And Mark Mitchell has said that to me. He says there's another 2 weeks of stories in this,
yep,
which would indicate there's a whole heap of stuff that they already know, because they did know a lot about this. So actually, when you look at it, it's not only this guy skimming who has pled guilty to viewing these vile images, but he also turned the tables on this woman who was, quote, harassing him, 38 emails, and rather than be a complainant, they turned her into someone they prosecuted to silence her. It's pretty bad.
It's interesting you make the distinction too. So there's very few stories, guys, there's very few topics that I'm wary of venturing into, but this is one, and I'll tell you why. There's two reasons for this. One of them is that people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So in respect to my own life, I mean, I was a terrible father and a terrible husband, and so I'm always very cautious about moralising about what other people do with regard to their lives and, their personal circumstances. And the second reason I'm always cautious in regard to this particular topic is that putting aside these terrible, terrible revelations, and Maurice is right, there's lots of them. When you look at your average cop in this country, and you talk to your Bobby on the beat, the vast majority of these men and women are just extraordinary. They're just extraordinary people. They get about doing, and their ability to balance between their legal requirement to obviously act as custodians of the law and their understanding of the balance between that and the need to serve the public. It's pretty high. So we're talking about exceptions. We're not talking about the rank and file. Let's put all that aside, though, and let's get to the nature of the issue itself. So let's be clear. We're talking about the higher echelons. We're talking about the upper management of the police. We're not talking about the rank and file police in most cases. Yeah. So let's look at this particular case. So if we look at McSkimming, there's two aspects to this. There's the stuff that he did in terms of failings in his personal life, which I suspected you would find a lot of Kiwis probably had, veered down that track. And then there is the stuff that he did around bestiality and paedophilia, which was disgusting and vile, and the fact that he thought that he could actually put this stuff on a police computer and get away with it is bad enough. But then he did for several years. It was actually covered up by others within the organisation. So I look at this and I think, well, how do you fix it? So if we can identify the problem as a systemic one at the top end of the organisation, what do you do to fix it? We've got the IPCA, and clearly, as you indicated in the opening, Duncan, that's working at least to the extent that now that it's investigated this, it's actually made a finding and it's come down pretty hard. Is there a way this could have been dealt with quicker? Are there processes that could have been put in place to have dealt with this more expediently and in a way where it wasn't allowed to carry on for as long as it did? Don't know, and I think that's where the nub of the issue is.
Politicians all say from all parties, Maurice, they knew nothing about any of this. They knew nothing about the woman, they knew nothing about the allegations, they knew nothing at all. That's why McSkimming was promoted to Deputy Commissioner under Labour. They supported that, so they didn't know. Mark Mitchell didn't know, no one knew. Now, would that be right?
I guess so. I was quite gobsmacked at the idea that someone had put a rule onto his Outlook email which said anything about this case gets diverted back and you don't get to see it. I write all my own rules in Outlook about what I do with incoming email, and if it contains this, drop it to that folder. I would never allow a rule to go in there. If this comes in, I don't want to see it, it goes away. I would copy it off to someone and say I want an answer, but I would want to see it. And I think that alone is really unconscionable of whoever within police put that rule in place on a minister's computer, that it just diverted the stuff coming from him. So the cover-up gets really quite tawdry at that point. But the other thing I was worried about with the McSkimming thing is the police, whenever they used to brief ministers, would tell us about how incredible their forensic capability now to find someone was at a site. If they even breathed on the window outside of a building, they'd get some DNA from the breath and they would be able to tie it to that person was at the site. So they basically left me with a very strong feeling, which I still hold, you can't do anything in this world without it being found out.
Yeah, pretty much.
Found out. And so to use police computers for bestiality and paedophilia, and to think it won't somehow be uncovered, it just, my ghast is flabbered, because I just don't know how that could happen.
Because when you look at it, they only found that by accident, Maurice. Actually, that was an accidental find. Remember, they were investigating the complainant, right? So this was all backfiring. It was going everywhere, and they were right up to Andy Costa, who was withholding it from ministers and not telling anyone.
In fact, that was what I assumed. I assumed that in going through the process of investigating the complainant's claims that
they came across this.
Yeah. So which suggests that they wouldn't otherwise have found it, which kind of puts the lie, well, not the lie, but kind of puts some sort of pall over what Maurice was saying earlier. So it suggests that there is a law for the public, and then there's a law for the police themselves, and that's concerning. And I come back to what I said before. I don't believe that's endemic throughout the organisation. I suspect that it applies to certain individuals at certain levels of the police.
But this happened. All the people on the executive who knew and who aided and abetted and who looked the other way and everything, they've all gone now. So in the past year, they've all just trotted off into the wilderness.
Is that true? Because I keep seeing that's still 2 left. Is that
no? There's
right?
2 left, but there's 2 left. So all the top brass who were there have gone, and the 2 left are the next level.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're right, and police and investigations have opened up. Employment investigations have opened up into those 2 men. It was pretty widespread, Maurice.
Yeah, look, again, I'm one of those people who believe the police do a phenomenal job, and
So do I,
it's a pretty ghastly job. I've been out on the town with them at nights. They used to take ministers if you wanted to do and just do a night. And what they had to put up with was just vile. People spitting at them and I can smell bacon sizzling, and they had to walk through bars to arrest underage kids and so on, and they just got treated like rubbish and so on. And I said, I don't know, I couldn't do the job they did. It was They had to stay calm, focused. If someone was just being an absolute foul mouth, they still had to just do their job as normal. So I think it's the old 90-10 or even 95-5 rule. A massive chunk of them are really good people doing a hell of a hard job. They must feel let down as well, actually. They must.
The other worry,
But I think
the other worry about this is that you've got this defund the police nonsense that's been imported from the US that the Greens and Te Pāti Māori are hammering on about, which has no relevance here. But all this does, unfortunately, is it just fuels those sorts of claims, and you get people looking forensically at what we're spending on these services rather than the nature of the quality of the service itself.
Yeah, I think Richard Chambers is an excellent in saying all of this. I still give a balanced view in the sense that Chambers is the right man for the job. He's a brilliant commissioner. I've done some work with him over the years, different media stories and things. He is ethical to the bone. He's got the right background, and I believe he will clean it up. And you've got to remember, this is the instance where McSkimming was going for the job, and so was Chambers. Chambers had his people, McSkimming had his. Now, the people around McSkimming wanted him to get the job because they were all looking after each other. So there's that bit of backstory to that as well. But I think Chambers is excellent. I don't know what your views are.
I think Chambers is outstanding. I think so far, and anybody who starts bringing up the fact that he got a speeding ticket, I was Minister of Transport and had, I think, 5 on the books at some stage for having gone over the speed limit wherever it was. But, I mean, in the end, just leave that stuff alone. That's nothing to do with being a good cop or anything else. I mean,
going 112, it makes him one of us. I mean, it makes him actually normal,
Well, I'm about to drive to Hamilton in a few minutes' time, and I can tell you that I drive on the 110 part of the motorway now, and I often find I'm well above the 110, as are the cars around me. So look, that's nothing. I mean, people are going, I heard the talk about this morning, so how can you have a police commissioner? I just get off the grass. I think he's outstanding. And he must be sitting there at nights going, what a bloody mess I've got to now clean up.
Yeah, because it does go to the heart of confidence. So, there'll be people out there even this weekend who look at a police officer and they'll look at them differently now, because that's just the way it is, right?
I would hope they don't. I would hope that most people are sophisticated enough to recognise that this is an isolated incident with an individual who should never have been in that role, and that your average cop is the same person he or she was yesterday and continues to discharge their responsibilities in a very professional way. That's probably for me the bigger. It's not the issue itself. It's not all the other stuff. It's the way this is reflecting on the police force, and I just hope Kiwis recognise that for what it is.
Yeah, I want to just say it's not quite as simple as that. If it had just been McSkimming, I'd have say there's a rotten apple in the barrel.
Yeah,
he's now been found, but there is some quite systemic cover-up going on with quite senior people across quite a range of people. I see the guy who's at the civil aviation has now been stood down, and I keep saying, well, I'm not quite sure you can just pass it off as one rotten apple.
Yeah, that's fair.
I've read a pile of these IPCA reports over the last 30 years. That one that I read recently, that just stands out, Maurice. It really stands out. Beacon,
Well, I remember reading the Margaret Baisley report in 2007, and that was like a bolt out of the blue about this is just so wrong. There is a culture of this has got to be changed. And we were literally told that this has been completely taken on board, the whole place refocused, rechanged. Now, 2007's a while ago, but it's not a long time ago. And
Louise Nicholas, I thought they learned from Louise Nicholas how to deal with sexual complaints.
Yeah, well, as I said, just out of the blue got ChatGPT to give me a list. I got 15 of people who had been convicted and done a long time in jail because false evidence had been presented. I had the Margaret Baisley report. There was the Louise Nicholas. There was Roastbusters. There was just a stag of them. And then just recent ones were saying they'd been doing breath testing when they weren't, and then it finally ended up with the McSkimming one. So I think Chambers is the right man to go in there and say, we're going to clean this out. Anybody involved in this stuff has no place or right to be here. And I think it has to be that hard line rather than we'll just try to, do better.
So here's a question. Here's a question for you guys, and it's probably rhetorical, and you could apply the same question I'm about to ask to nursing and teaching and a whole range of other professions. Are the police just a reflection of broader New Zealand society?
Yes.
Is this not just the police? Is this the fact that our standards as a society have fallen away, and therefore it's not to be unexpected that this would happen, not just in this profession, but a whole range of others?
I think you could argue 15,000 police officers, there's very few that are rotten.
I agree.
Yeah, a tiny number, but you've got to watch for it being systemic. Had McSkimming been found out and prosecuted the way he has, and nobody else was involved or knew or anything else, I'd say, there you go, they got the one rotten apple in the barrel, done. But what I keep reading is these people knew, then they tried to cover that up, then they stopped it going to the minister's office, then these people were involved in covering that off, closing that. And I keep thinking that is something that should never be in their minds, because they always say whatever it is, it'll be found out. I think there was a wonderful quote from, I'm not sure, one of the Marx brothers or something, but it was, two people can keep a secret as long as one of them is dead.
Yeah, that's true. You want someone to know something? Tell one person.
These people, one person may keep a secret. Once more than one knows, it will get found out along the way somewhere. And so the fact that McSkimming thought he could use a police computer to do that stuff, and it was all right, that immediately raises with me real concerns what a mindset must have been, instead of saying, I'm not touching that on my work computer. When I get home, I've got my own PC for that. That's wow.
Yes, the either the arrogance and the entitlement and the I can't be touched, or the naivety. It's one or the other.
Or I've got enough of a closed circle around me that everyone will make sure it doesn't get any further.
God, that's arrogant. God, okay, so that means you're above the law. Shocking. The polls. I see that the latest poll has Labor getting a little bounce. I thought that they handled the capital gains tax woefully, and I thought that was all very unpopular. But this poll, if you believe it, shows them back in power.
So firstly, let's be clear, this is Talbot Mills, and I've said this to you before, Duncan, and I'll say it every time it's Talbot Mills. This is Labor's polling company. So you can. I'm not suggesting that they're unprofessional. I am suggesting that there will be some degree of bias in not necessarily in the collection of data, but certainly in the presentation of it. Having said that, I cannot get my head around the fact that a substantial proportion of New Zealanders appear to be saying, if this is to believe to any degree, we want some more of what we've just got rid of 2 years ago. So I did the same thing that Maurice did this morning. I went to ChatGPT and I asked it a different question. I said, show me all of the reasons that New Zealanders decided to change government in 2023. And I'm not going to read it, guys, because the list is too long. Seriously, and I'm not kidding. It is way too long. I couldn't get through it. It would take an hour. There are so many reasons that people in this country decided that they wanted to get rid of the last government. The fact that only 2 years, not even 3 years, only 2 years have passed, and that anybody, far less 38% of the public, would be seriously saying to themselves, let's take these lunatics and let's put them back in government again. Now, I have problems with the current coalition. We talk about them on the show. And there are things that they do that I'm unhappy about, and there are things that they do that I think they could do better. But, oh my God, we're talking about degrees of magnitude between some stuff that could be fixed versus clowns in a circus that damn near destroyed this country. But only 2 years ago.
Well, I think they did.
This does my head in. Well, they did. This does my head in. So what it suggests to me is one of two things, guys. It either suggests that that something has changed in the public psyche that we would actually look at doing this again, or that the satisfaction with the current government is so bad and confidence is so low that anything else is going to be acceptable, or maybe it's a combination of the two.
Is it Luxon? I mean, is Luxon that unpopular and that unattractive as a leader, and that sort of wishy-washy, that the floating voter, if there's such a thing, has gone back to Labour? Could it be that bad?
Let me give you an absolute factual-based statistics up the wazoo to verify it. the one thing that costs you in politics is unfulfilled expectations. If you say we will do the following, and people go, I like what they're saying about this, good on them, and when they get to power they don't, that's way more harmful than if you hadn't said anything and are just floating around not doing much. Now, this government, I've gone and made some clips. You can get your staff to do some as well, or I'll send you my little hard drive, of some of the lines they ran before the 2023 election about Labor's spending money like a drunken sailor. They've spent this many billions for getting nothing from it. We're going to rein that back in. The debt mountain is getting so big, we're going to take a sledgehammer to the debt mountain and get rid of it. And it was all the stuff that I'm sitting there going, finally, we're going to do something, thank God. And now if you look at the Budget 2025 document, it's embarrassing. The 45-degree slope keeps just going on. The debt mountain keeps going on. The public service that was going to be completely decimated by this government because we got so many bloody bureaucrats being paid so much for doing nothing didn't happen. A few unfilled positions got cancelled out, but that was about it. And so the vast bulk of their voters, I mean, everyone complains to me about, I wish you wouldn't go on about the national government. You know, we need to see them back. And I said, my complaints are so that we can see them back. I want them to stand for something. I want
you just be honest.
Be doing.
Here's what I think happened, and I'll be interested, Maurice, if you can confirm this. So when I look at the polls and when I look at where the support for the current coalition is, it's overwhelmingly males over a certain age, and it's overwhelmingly males overall. I suspect, Maurice, that when they've done the last couple of budgets, that they've sat down and they've looked at those women in the centre who they think might vote, potentially could be attracted over to National, and they've said, we don't care about these guys because we've already got them. We don't want to upset this cohort here. Therefore, we're going to do things that we said, or we're not going to do things that we said we were going to do. Well, that's the question. So I would argue that they're not going to win those people anyway. So they're probably going to move to the left. They would be far better to focus on the support of people who voted for them at the last election and actually believe what they said they were going to do.
Okay, so we have I'm on the school board. Okay, we voted onto the Mount Albert Grammar School board. So and I had our first meeting the other night, and we are facing 700 new students next year because of housing intensification. So 700 we can't turn away. We're at capacity. We don't have any new classrooms, and we've got nothing in the funding regime for the next 5 years. No one will fund us, and we don't have classrooms. We're facing, for the first time in our history, classrooms on netball courts if the weather's fine. That's Africa. This is not New Zealand, Maurice.
Well,
you fund classrooms as a matter of course, don't you?
You finally led me into what I was going to break as news today on you heard it on this station first. National's in a huge problem in Auckland with what it's trying to do with housing intensification. They have set a 2 million upper limit that we've got to make available, and by setting that unrealistic number, which remember that's 2 million dwellings, and the average number of people that live per dwelling is just on 3, so 2 million dwellings is a 6 million population we're going to have to cater for. And what it's going to do is drive the intensification, not just into the rail corridors where we should be doing it, because if you're going to build a $6 billion train set, you should provide customers for it. Not into the bus corridors, because we need to make sure more people are using public transport. But it's going to drive it right down into suburbia and small street suburbia and lovely little leafy sections where some developer can come and stick some ghastly monstrosity next to yours for no reason. And I'll give you 3 numbers that I want you to remember. This needs to go down and be referred to. At the last election, in the 22 electorates that make up Auckland, there are 22 of them that make up the Auckland Council area. In those 22 seats, National got 45% of the party vote. In the remainder of New Zealand, that's 2/3 of the total vote, because Auckland's about 1/3 of the vote and the rest is 2/3. In the remainder of New Zealand, the party vote was 35%.
Wow.
That is 10 percentage points difference. And when you did the weighted average, it comes out at 38 for the whole lot. So their party vote was 38%. But they won in Auckland, and now they are sitting on this ridiculous 2 million upper limit, which was put in by Labour under MDRS, said to be a joke. Bishop will not move on it. Luxon will not move on it. And I'm telling you now, it will be the end of them, because the damage will be done in the electorates where their voters lie. The people that
It's
own...
being done right now. The damage is happening. I'm at the forefront of this because we don't know how to put kids into classrooms next year.
Correct.
We're stuffed.
Correct.
Let me add some additional scary stuff to this. So if you're to believe these figures with regard to from the Talbot Mills poll regarding Labor, and you infer from that this is support from their idea of a capital gains tax, and you look at the detail of that tax to the extent that there is any, if you look at the detail of that tax, which is talking about focusing on property investors, landlords. Here's something you might want to think about, guys, and viewers might want to think about. Be careful what you wish for. Let me tell you why. This country's continuing to grow. Maurice has already indicated 6 million and upward, and that'll be the result of immigration. If the trajectory remains the same as it's been over the last couple of decades, that'll be the result of immigration over the next 10 or 15, 20 years. So assuming that immigration grows, that means we're going to need more housing, which includes needing more rental housing. Now, at the moment, there are, and there's no exact figures on this, but at the moment there are somewhere between 450 and 500,000 rental units in this country. Kāinga Ora owns about 70,000 of them. Councils and public bodies own about another 20,000. Let's be really gracious and say that's 100,000. That means that the other 350 to 400,000 of those properties are owned by private property investors, landlords, mum and dad, most of whom are mum and dads. Now, let me tell you something about those people, which is really important to understand. They're not fat cats. They're not people who are making a lot of money out of it. Most of them are doing it for retirement. And those people at the moment, in the current environment and over the last few years, have actually been making quite a substantial loss on those investment properties, which means that they are not only subsidising the tenant, they're subsidising the taxpayer. Now, if you create an environment where you make it more difficult for those people to invest in property, and they start getting out of that, and you start getting an avalanche of those property investors disappearing from the market, there is only one other party who can provide that accommodation, and that's the taxpayer. Right. And let me tell you, that is frightening. The implications of that for a country that's growing over the next 20 years are terrifying.
I agree.
Yeah,
I just want to put my last sentence on that last stuff I was talking about. Yep. We do need more housing. We need more intensification. We need it along the major rail corridors. If you fly over any city in America, because while I was Consul General, I was travelling a lot, you can fly over a city and you can look down and say, oh, I can see where the rail lines are. They're underground, but there are high-rise buildings down the vein where the train is. They build, 10, 15-storey apartments all along the rail corridor. So I'm okay. We should do that, and no one is objecting. We should also intensify around the town centres. I agree with that. We're going to have to provide accommodation. But when you make an artificial number like the 2 million dwellings that Bishop is hanging on to, and when you ask where did that come from, and you're told, well, that was what came out of Labour's MDRS when they said if every parcel of land had 3 buildings at 3 stories, you say that's not the reason for anything. Come back and tell me why 1.6.
There's no justification.
And what you're going to get, I've just been at a meeting this morning in Howick with a Ratepayers and Residents Association, and the argument, they got stuck into me because they sort of see me still as national. They said, you can kiss goodbye to winning the next election if you keep on with this nonsense stuff, even though, and the answer I'll give you at the very end is, there's no need to do this. Any realistic number, if you set it at 1.6 million, you can accommodate that right throughout. You could do some green fields as well, not much, but you could do some. You can do quite a bit of high-rise on the rail corridors. You can do stuff around the city centres. You can leave some of the leafy suburb stuff untouched. Those voters will never forgive you. And this will be, I want it to be recorded on this station today, this will be the election issue to end all issues in Auckland.
Yep, this will be the suburban issues. These are the street corner issues. Because I sold a place for this very reason. I went from 2 houses across from me to 17, and there were suddenly 30 cars. I couldn't get into my driveway. I thought, fuck this, I'm out.
Correct.
It really pissed me off. I'll move on. Ashley, screening. I want to talk screening.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting issue. Came up about a week ago. So Labor have announced a policy around screening for cervical cancer. So they're basically talking about increasing access to that. It'll be free for anyone aged between 25 and 69 as a policy that they're introducing. Again, no detail because Labor don't do detail on policy. But if you have some idea. Now here's the thing with this. So this stuff, and there's a whole range of policies over the last 20 or 30 years that have been designed to improve the lot of women. Nobody disagrees with that. Nobody disagrees with that, particularly when it comes to things like educational entertainment, pay, equality, which is different to pay equity, and a whole range of other policies that both parties have promoted over that period of time. Fantastic stuff. But it does raise for me an issue that I think the country needs to start thinking about seriously, guys, and it's about, while this stuff's been going on, and it's great, we've been seeing this quite strong decline in the conditions of men across a whole range of indicators. And I'm going to give you just 9 here, just as an indication. Suicide, men are 2.5 times more likely to die by suicide than women in New Zealand. Latest stats from Stats New Zealand, life expectancy for men is 80.1 years. For females, it's 83.5. Tertiary education participation, only 39% of domestic university students are men. School outcomes. Girls outperform boys in literacy measures, and they stay in school longer. They're much more likely to have university entrance. Workplace injuries, 68% to 71% of workplace injuries are men, and 90 to 96% of workplace fatalities are likely to be men. Imprisonment, 95% of prisoners are men. Prostate cancer, so if you compare that to cervical cancer screening, prostate cancer, whereas there are about 700 deaths per year from cervical cancer, it's about 4,000 for men. It's a huge difference in numbers. Post-school disengagement, men are much less likely to be engaged in the workforce than men are. Work-related health risk. I won't keep going through. The point I'm making here is this is not to decry the stuff that we're doing for women. It's all fantastic stuff. But at some point we need to recognise, hey, we're actually developing a crisis for young men, and that's going to have a real impact on our country if a government doesn't come in and say we need to do something about this.
I was looking at some stats around boys' achievement in the schools because I'm now sitting on this board, and it is a punch to the face.
Yeah.
Boys are disengaged.
Yeah.
Their truancy levels, they're not turning up levels, because truancy not turning up different things, and so it is appalling. I don't know, Maurice, how you create a policy around this, but for every $1 that you spend on women in a hospital, I think they spend 5 cents on men.
But in the end,
is that bad?
Any of those policy decisions should be evidence-based, driven from fact. And, the old Latin saying, contra vera nihil obstat. Against fact, there is no argument. So if there is that many prostate cancer deaths, then that percentage of your money going into both treatment and prevention should be higher than another one where the death rate is a third of it or a quarter of it or whatever. Regardless of genders, regardless of ethnicities, we should be putting those, where is the best bang for the buck in terms of both, prevention and for cure. But Ashley's stats gave me one really bit of hope there. The life expectancy for women being a lot more than men, I've just thought about what transitioning could mean. I could get another 3 or 4 more years out of life. Is that what you're telling me?
Look, pretty much.
I think I'm actually
I have to think about this one seriously now.
Maurice, behave yourself. I think that the women could get New Zealand Super later then, could they? Under this scenario.
No, I don't think you can touch any of that stuff.
Yeah. What time is it?
But I think my mother's calling me for dinner. But in the end,
she's just hung up on us.
No, but in the end, your decisions for researching, for prevention programs, for cure programs, really have to be driven by fact-based stuff rather than what's most politically acceptable or who likes this most or which voters would benefit from this the most.
But both parties are guilty of this stuff.
I think the list that Ashley just wrote out should be put onto every bloody bulletin board you can find to say there's some really serious stuff. And men's underachievement in the education system is quite worrying.
And just to stress before, so this isn't, for me, this isn't a beat up on these initiatives for women, which I think are fantastic. But this is about saying when you get to the point where the pendulum swings so far the other day that it's actually harming the other gender, that's a serious problem. You've got to do something about that.
Yeah. You also wanted to talk about the government backing of the under-16 social media ban.
Only in a very broad sense, in that so I see Luxon's doubling down on this. This is this idea of stopping basically young kids from having access to social media. Now, the issue with this for me is because there's a whole lot of criticism around privacy and the rights of the individual and a whole range of other stuff. And to be fair, the difficulty of implementing such a policy and how difficult that's proved to be in other jurisdictions that have tried it. Look, I get all of that and I accept it, but we know empirically, to go back to the point that Maurice raised before, we know empirically the damage and the harm that social media does to young people. Not just in respect of the social media itself, but in respect of the peer group pressure that it puts on particularly young women around, there's you hear about this a lot, how you go to the social media of young women and they all look like they're living the perfect life and actually none of them are. It's all a pretense and it's all this pressure that's on them from their peers to appear that way. So for me, the harm massively outweighs the concerns against this, and we're not talking about the rights of the individual for adults. We're talking about under 16-year-olds. I think Luxon's absolutely right to drill down on this, and I hope that they proceed with it.
I totally agree with you.
I've been involved in this. I've been involved with this as well, and I support what they're doing. And I've seen some of the results at school of not having the device in their hands. We've got noise in the school. Someone broke a window the other day throwing a ball through it, and the principal stood there and clapped. Said, "Great, you're back out there playing."
Yeah.
Support, so.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. I've always just got one little nagging problem, and that is how do you make it work?
I understand.
Copy the Aussies.
Every time you put a limit on something or put a rule to block people or stop doing this, the kids are so smart. There will be all sorts of, they'll have some sort of a device that will change their settings, take them to another website, use some sort of a proxy server.
I've got it already.
So I'm in favour of it because I think it's causing a huge amount of damage and changing values and changing all sorts of things, but I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Not to mention the neck problems with doing this for half their lives when they get older.
They're just disengaged. I mean, I see. I've got a 15-year-old, and I've got all his mates in the car all the time and at home, and they are. It pisses me off when I walk into a room and there's 4 of them or 5 of them in there and they're not talking and they're on their phones. I mean, just give us the phones or piss off. Yeah. What are you doing here? You might as well just be at each other's houses.
Based on what we know from evolution, within a few generations they'll have thumbs that are about 3 foot long, bloody thumbs like this, trying to touch the buttons all over. Well,
I did this test the other day of one of the kids in the car. And I said, can you check us your phone or tell us how many hours you've done? Just what's your daily usage? And it had been school holidays, but it was a Sunday. And he said, that's just a bit embarrassing. I've just done 22 hours on Sunday. I said, 22 hours? I said, did you sleep?
Wow.
What happened? 22 hours. Yeah. I wrote a column about this because his parents are shift workers. So they're never home, and he has free reign. But 22 hours. No wonder he's not learning.
Yeah.
But it's not. This is the other thing, because we talk about it being all about, the lifestyle's changed and parents are now working. My parents were working as well, but we were outside. And I know the technology didn't exist, don't get me wrong, but we were outside, we were building huts, we would get up to no good in all sorts of other ways on our bikes.
Technology didn't exist.
None of this stuff. And that was adding a dimension to your life that you carried into adulthood. These kids aren't going to have this. Yeah. All they're going to have is their experience of looking at something on a computer.
So let's fix it. Yeah. I've got reservations about how you can do that.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah. You're banned from drinking alcohol at 16. We found a way around it. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. I mean, the rules are out there. Like, we've got really strict gun rules about getting your license and keeping the ammunition in a separate lockup, and the machine has to be kept, and then they come and do a psychometric evaluation and so on. But right now today in South Auckland, there'll be some mongrel mob member with a sawn-off shotgun under the front seat of his HK Holden, doesn't even know there's such a law, or that he's supposed to abide by, or that. So the problem is, you can get to the ones that you didn't want to get to, but you can't get to the ones that you wanted to. And I copped a lot of flack in the 90s when I was Minister of Communications. I wasn't doing more to try and ban pornography on the internet. And I kept saying publicly, I'm really happy to do so. I just want to know how.
Okay, time for some letters to the editor. And what do we say? Right, hey Duncan, here's one for the team. How can this government make changes to government-employed civil servants' contracts to remove outgoing government's ability to sow the weeds of despair by putting people of an opposite political leaning anti-next government in place? I'm sure that in the use all these types of government contracts at the same time as their election results take effect. Oh, yeah, so what you're saying is get rid of the people on these government contracts once there's a change of government like they do in America. Yeah? I actually think there's something valid in that. Because every government appoints their own people to places. So I actually do think you're right. You'd be getting rid of a lot of people, but at least they'd have a finite date. They know when they're leaving, right? And also, Duncan, make the term 4 years so as to give enough time to show a government's changes can actually take effect. Yeah, it's hard to argue as well. Look at our tax-paid media and other government contracts, i.e. the police commissioner, all are hangovers of Jacinda and Chucky Numbnuts, even if they try to deny it. They're fully responsible for all the evil and the lies. Thanks, Duncan, for a great show. Nige. Chucky Numbnuts. Is that that's Hipkins? Chucky Numbnuts. You probably like that. Chucky Numbnuts with a sausage roll. Anyway, yeah, and that's us, folks. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for getting in touch. Remember, you can subscribe. Text 3598. So text my name to 3598. I'll send you the link. And for $7.99 a month, you get all the bonus content, which comes out shortly anyway, for those subscribers. So many subscribers signing up each day. I can just see them. It just builds and builds and builds. And we're really appreciative of your efforts and your approach and your ability and your desire to sign up to this podcast. We really need it. We appreciate it. It means that we stay around for a lot longer. Which that's the good news. And the even better news, we'll get some merch soon as well. That'll come your way if you'd like it. What did you say you wanted, hats or hoodies? I don't even know what we agreed on. You may want to let me know. That's us, folks. Remember, life is no dress rehearsal. There is no curtain raiser. So we'll do this all again on Monday. But for now, I'm out of here. Thank you to my producers, Brody and Lockie. Good guys, great product. Thank you, guys. And take care of yourselves over the weekend. We'll see you Monday. Bye.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief, sponsored by the Brothers Green. Feed your gut what it needs. Digest Gut Health Protein Powder. I use it myself. It supports natural digestion and gut health. Made with premium Canterbury-grown hemp powder and a unique blend of active kiwifruit enzyme powder and kiwifruit skin extract, offering natural prebiotics and a nutrient-rich profile to complement a balanced lifestyle. Always read the label. Take as directed. Supplementary, of course, to a balanced diet. The Brothers Green, Christchurch.